today I want to share with you some tips, I guess. I don't really think they're steps, so we'll say tips on what to do now that you've decided you're going to homeschool. So, you've decided to homeschool. Now what? Just, first of all, take a deep breath and know that you've made this decision for a reason, and there's probably some need or desire or like some heart guidance going on there. And so just kind of rest in that. Rest assured that you're going to be able to do this. You're going to make it through some of the decisions and just like the overwhelm, intimidate, I don't know what I'm doing piece of it. You're going to make it through that. Are we ever experts? Probably not, although I think those homeschool moms that have homeschooled for 15 years might be verging on the expert level, but anyways. So what to do now that you've decided you're going to homeschool? First, watch my previous video, you know that I tell you to go ahead and think about what your why is. Why do you want to homeschool? So now I would say, if you haven't really thought about that yet, you need to think about why, and maybe even write it down. Why are you homeschooling? Why does your family need to, want to? What sounds good about it for you guys? And then also with that, make a vision, like a vision statement for your homeschool. What is the vision statement of your homeschool? What's going to be the guiding force, the foundation, and the principles that your homeschool is founded on? And that's really important because it gives you a purpose and a direction, and that will come into play for just making so many of your decisions on what you'll allow your kids to be a part of, and what extracurriculars you will allow or not allow. Will you do co-op? And your curriculum choices as well. So that's why your vision, like a vision statement, is really important for you. We have a vision statement for our homeschool, and it's pretty. I have like a small elevator pitch vision statement, basically for myself to keep refreshed on when I'm feeling really down, or maybe I'm struggling with what we're doing. And also, if I ever come into contact with backlash, or people maybe rudely asking or me why I'm homeschooling, or telling me that I shouldn't, I have this little elevator pitch that I can politely give. But then I also have like a long vision statement, kind of going more in depth onto certain aspects of schooling. So for us, what they're going to get out of school mentally, physically, spiritually, and socially are some of the biggies that I focus on, as well as just what is really important for our school. So I would highly recommend you doing that. There are some, I believe, Confessions of a Homeschooler, Erica there, she has like some papers, they're free for you to download and look over, and kind of as a prompt for a vision statement. I did not do as long as hers is, but it was very helpful to get me going. And then once you get your vision, also goals. So I have goals for what our children will get out of their whole school experience, and this would be, if for my ideal, like what I envision ideally is, they will school with me until graduation. That may not happen. My husband is not super sold on high school being homeschooled, and we'll see. Maybe that won't be what's best for our family at that point. I don't know. But my ideal is that it is. And so at that point, my goal is, when they leave my home, what do I want them to have learned and know, and overall, what do I want to happen? And then I have a yearly goal, and of course I don't set that until that year because I don't know what that child needs that year. And the yearly goal is very helpful on what you're going to be picking for your curriculum. So having visions and goals just help really set you up for your decision-making process, honestly. And also, I guess I want to kind of backtrack and say this video is not really going to go over curriculum like choosing a curriculum, I'm going to get you set up. I'm going to give you a base on what knowledge you need, so that way you can make choices when it comes to curriculum time. Next, and very, very important, is to go ahead and visit HSDLA. Their website is got so much information in it. You're going to need to know what your state's guidelines are, and then also what the requirements for your state, because every state is different. The requirements are very different for all states, and so you need to see what you are required to do, whether that be I'm not sure of how many days you homeschool are on that one or your state website, but you do need to know how many days you have to school for. But also the biggies on HSDLA would be what you have to do as far as, do you have to test for your school? Like at the end of the year, some states require testing to be done for homeschoolers. Some states require like a portfolio of your end of the year work, and so what would you need to save for that? Your grades, your attendance. Also, I think some do like an audit type deal, and I don't know how that works. Some states do require that you send a letter into your local superintendent every year for your intent to homeschool. In states like mine, where it's just really relaxed, you actually don't have to send in a letter of intent unless your child has been in the public school system and you're taking them out. If they've never touched their toes into the public school system, then you don't have to do that. So it just really depends on your state. And that is where HSDLA comes in. And then go ahead, after you look at HSDLA, then I would hop over to your state's like standards. Usually that's on the state website, or you can just type in state standards for such and such grade. And then you'll find the standards for that grade, or for ours it's like all together. But the state standards for each year is very important as well, especially depending on which state you're in. Some states you have to follow the standards a little bit more closely than other states. Regardless, it's kind of helpful to know what are the standards of your state, to kind of know where you're at and where your kids are at and where you might want to be or need to be. So then once you've got all of that figured out, the next thing that I would suggest that you do is to look into the different types of homeschooling, because it's not all the same. And when I first started, I had no idea what I was getting myself into with this whole types of homeschooling thing. I just kind of thought it was school at home. I had some friends and some cousins that were homeschooled for briefly, and to me, an outsider looking in and a young child, the way that they did it just looked like schooling at home, or like public school at home, and so that's what I always thought it was. But looking into it, I saw that there are so many ways that you can make it your own, and so many kind of like schools of thought that kind of help guide your curriculum choices then, depending on where you fit in. And so looking into those will help you to know what you want for your homeschool, how you want it to look, what you think will fit your family life, and just some examples, because you can do a quick Google search and it will tell you a bunch of different kinds. But just a couple examples would be the traditional school at home. There's unschooling, there's classical schooling, unit studies. Some people do only unit studies. There's Charlotte Mason, life schooling, and then also, there's tons other, but then also one that I want to mention is eclectic, because eclectic is what I consider myself, basically because I kind of pull from a couple of, not all of them, but a couple of different like schools of thought and put it together for what works best for us. Because at first I thought, oh my goodness, I have to pick one of these. I don't really know, and I'm kind of a hodgepodge. But looking into those and see what pulls you, what pulls your heart, will help you to know, what direction to go with homeschooling. And then when you look at your curriculum, usually they say kind of where they fit in, and so that'll be helpful to know, is that something that you're interested in or not. And then after you do that, then I highly recommend you look into what kind of learners your children are. And every child is generally pretty different, but it is super helpful to know how they learn. That way you know what kind of curriculum to look at, how to teach to them, and what do they need to be successful at learning. So if you have no idea what that is, it's kinesthetic learners, auditory learners, or visual learners. Now, as a human being, of course, we kind of usually have bits and pieces all together that make up how you learn, so a kinesthetic learner still needs a little bit of visual, a little bit of auditory, whatever. Some people are more of a hodgepodge, and so they, need all three in different types of things. It just depends. And some people are just like heavily auditory, heavily, visual, whatever it may be. But for the most part, the, I guess, average normal thing I would say is that you're usually dominant in one kind of learning, and then the other types of learning fill in the rest of your needs. I hope that makes sense. So you're going to want to see what kind of learner your child or children are. And to do that, you can look up the different kinds of learning styles that there are, and that will kind of help, because you'll start reading it and say, oh my goodness, that's this kid or whatever. But there is also a quiz by Homeschool On. I do not remember what her name is, but that is what her homeschool stuff is called. So if you go to Homeschool On, and you could even type in Homeschool On type of learner, and I believe that will probably bring you to what you want for a quiz that will kind of help guide you to what kind of learner your children are. I also want to mention, if you have younger children, the younger your child is, the more hands-on they're going to be, no matter what kind of learner they end up being. Because as they're young, learning through play is really, really the best way to keep their attention and to help them to learn. And there are all sorts of different schools of thought on how to do like preschool, kindergarten, and even first grade, and there is totally room for all of that. I do kind of like some traditional schooling for preschool and kindergarten, but I do a lot of activities and a lot of play. So just keep that in mind. You might not know what kind of learner your preschooler is, or even your kindergartner. I'm not sure about first grade, how solidified that gets at that point. Then moving on, you want to know, what kind of teacher are you? How do you like to teach? What style is your teaching, and what fits you best? Now, if you are a first-time homeschooler and you really don't know what you're doing, which is normal, oh, sorry, there's a fly. If you're a first-time homeschooler, it may not really matter so much what kind of homeschooler you want to be, or what kind of teacher you think you are. To be comfortable, a lot of first-time homeschoolers like to pick curriculum that kind of just lay it all out for you and tell you exactly what to do. And that's totally fine, and that's a great way to start out, or even continue if that works for you. And so keep that in mind, that your first year, even if you think, oh, I think I want to do Charlotte Mason style, the first year it might be appealing to you to do more of a traditional, or like school at home type of homeschool, just to get your feet wet, to figure out what you're doing and to know how to kind of proceed with teaching. And that's totally fine and really helpful. Knowing what kind of teacher you are helps you to know what you are going to do well with, and what you as the teacher are going to be able to stick with. It is really amazing that we get to fine-tune things for our children, for our students. We get to fine-tune it to what their needs are. But in doing so, sometimes we can get lost in what do they need and forget about what do we need to be a successful teacher, because that's really important. To have our kids learn well, to have them be successful at learning, we need to be able to be successful at teaching them. And so do not forget the importance of how are you going to teach? How are you going to be able to teach best? And your student, if your children learn very differently than the way that you're most comfortable teaching, you're going to have to kind of draw that all together and figure out how to work it out so it works for all of you. And it's totally doable no matter what mishmash you have going on. And then finally, I would say that you want to take all of the things that we just talked about and marry them. Like I said, you want to marry all of them together because they all bring a picture of what homeschool is going to look like for you. Once you do that, once you figure out all these things, because sometimes they can seem like kind of coming at different directions, but once you bring them all together to figure out what's going to be best for your family and what's going to help you get out of homeschooling what you want to get out of homeschooling for your children, for yourself, and for your family, that's when you can then go ahead and look at curriculum. See what it's going to look like for you guys. Okay, that's what I have for tips to get started before you even look at curriculum. If you are a seasoned homeschooler, what's some advice that I missed? What are some tips that I missed that we can give new, fresh homeschoolers so that way they are not overwhelmed and intimidated by just getting started? So leave that in the comments if you have anything to add. And if you're a new homeschooler, let me know what else I can do to help. Do you have any other questions? I really want you to succeed. I know that you can succeed, and I know that this can be a wonderful adventure for you and your family. So please leave those questions in the comments. All right, guys, that's all that I have for today. I hope that this is helpful. If it is, go ahead and give it a like or a thumbs up so that way I know that these videos are on the right track. If there's anything else I can do for you, let me know, and just go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you want to see what comes next.